Humans aren't allowed here. Alien girl chose human lover and destroyed her family's conspiracy. The warning signs were written in every language used across the Velari Dominion. Humans aren't allowed here. The message glowed softly along the curved walls of the central transit hall, repeated again and again as travelers passed beneath it. Most aliens barely noticed the words anymore. To them, it was just another law, another truth accepted without question. But Elias Rourke noticed. He always did. Elias stood quietly near the edge of the hall, dressed in plain gray travel clothing that hid his human shape as much as possible. His hair was trimmed short, his posture relaxed, his hands empty and visible. He made himself small not because he was afraid, but because he understood something most species in the Dominion did not. Fear made people careless. Calm kept them alive. Around him, tall Velari nobles floated past on anti-grav platforms, their crystal thread robes shimmering with status markers. Lesser workers hurried along the floor paths, their eyes lowered, careful not to draw attention. Security drones hovered near the ceiling, scanning everything, trusting their ancient programs. None of them flagged Elias as a threat. That was the first mistake. Elias had not come to the Velari homeworld to fight, steal, or spy. Officially, he was listed as a neutral trade consultant from an outer system, invited under a loophole used by the elite when it benefited them. Unofficially, he was something far more dangerous. He was human, and humans had a habit of seeing patterns others ignored. Across the hall, Lyra Velari slowed her steps. She was different from the others, though most would not notice at first glance. Like all Velari nobles, her skin shimmered faintly with natural light, shifting colors based on emotion. Her eyes, large and silver blue, reflected the glow of the hall. But unlike the rest of her house, Lyra walked instead of floating. She said it helped her think. Her escorts followed a respectful distance behind, giving her space. She had asked for that. They obeyed because she was the daughter of House Velari, one of the Dominion's oldest and most powerful families. Lyra had grown up hearing the same stories as everyone else. Humans were violent. Humans were unstable. Humans could not be trusted in civilized space. Yet as she passed the transit hall, something pulled at her attention. A stillness. In a place filled with motion and noise, one figure stood calm, unmoving, watching rather than pushing forward. His presence did not demand space. It respected it. Lyra turned her head slightly, pretending to examine a nearby display, and studied him through her reflection. The being was clearly not Velari. His frame was dense, heavy with gravity-borne strength. His movements were precise but relaxed. Most of all, his eyes held no hunger for status, no fear of judgment. He looked grounded. Curiosity stirred, unexpected and unwelcome. She moved on, but her thoughts lingered. Later that cycle, in the upper gardens of the Velari Spire, Lyra stood near a pool of floating light flowers, their petals opening and closing with slow rhythm. The gardens were meant for meditation and political discussion, a place where secrets were spoken softly. Her mother's voice cut through the calm. "You were distracted today." Lyra did not turn. "I noticed something unusual." Her mother, Lady Saris Velari, stepped beside her. The older woman's glow was cool and controlled, the mark of practiced authority. "Unusual things are often dangerous." "It was a person," Lyra replied. "A trade consultant." Saris's glow darkened slightly. "Humans aren't allowed here." Lyra finally faced her. "Then why was he there?" Silence followed. That was answer enough. Saris changed the subject smoothly, speaking of upcoming council meetings and alliances. Lyra listened, nodded, and stored the moment away. She had learned long ago that the most important truths were hidden in what was not said. That night, Lyra could not sleep. The image of the human's calm eyes returned again and again. Not desire, not romance, something deeper. A sense of wrongness in the stories she had been told. On impulse, she accessed the restricted archives. Her clearance as a Velari heir opened doors most citizens never saw. She searched for human interactions, human conflicts, human trade history. What she found surprised her. Wars, yes, but always described without context. Defensive actions labeled as aggression, withdrawals framed as defeats. Records ended abruptly, files sealed by joint council decree. Someone had edited history. The next cycle, Lyra returned to the transit hall. She found Elias exactly where she expected him to be, not standing in the center, not hiding in shadows, but near the service corridor, speaking quietly with a maintenance worker whose translator flickered weakly. Lyra slowed her steps. The worker looked distressed, gesturing toward a malfunctioning panel. Elias listened patiently, then crouched, opened the panel, and adjusted a component with careful hands. The light stabilized. The worker's relief was clear. No payment was exchanged. Lyra felt something shift inside her. She approached before she could overthink it. "You are not from here," she said, her voice calm but curious. Elias stood slowly, keeping his movements visible. "That's correct. You helped him," she continued. "You didn't have to." "I know," Elias replied. His voice was steady, accented in a way she couldn't place. "But it was easy to do." Lyra studied him openly now. "You know the law?" "Yes." "Then why stay?" Elias met her gaze without challenge or submission. "Because laws aren't always written to protect the right people." Her glow flickered, a sign of surprise she could not fully control. "You speak carefully," she said. "I've had practice." Lyra hesitated, then made a choice that would later change the galaxy. "Walk with me." They moved together through the lesser-used corridors where servants and workers passed without recognition. Lyra dismissed her escorts with a subtle signal claiming private reflection. No one questioned her. As they walked, she asked questions, simple ones at first. Where he had traveled, what humans valued, why they accepted such isolation. Elias answered honestly. "We learned that forcing ourselves into places we weren't wanted only proved our enemies right," he said. "So we waited, we helped where we were allowed, we watched." "And what did you see?" Lyra asked. He paused. "Fear used like a tool." Lyra felt a chill. "By whom?" Elias did not answer directly. "By those who gain the most from it." They stopped at a viewing platform overlooking the lower city. Lights stretched endlessly, layered worlds built atop older ones. Lyra had always loved this view. "Why tell me this?" she asked. Elias looked out at the city, then back at her. "Because you noticed me, most don't. People who notice things matter." Lyra knew then that this was no ordinary human. Before she could speak again, her personal comm vibrated urgently. A priority signal, family level. She stepped aside to answer, her glow dimming as her father's image appeared. "You are being observed," he said without greeting. "Return to the spire immediately." Lyra looked back at Elias. "I have to go," she said. "I understand." As she turned away, Elias spoke once more. "Be careful, Lyra Velari. Some questions are dangerous." She froze. "You know my name." "Yes, how?" Elias smiled faintly. "Humans listen." Lyra walked away with her heart racing, aware for the first time that her world was far less stable than she had believed. High above, in chambers hidden from public record, members of House Velari watched silent projections of Lyra and Elias together. "And this," one voice said coldly. Another replied, "Not yet. The girl may be useful." The conspiracy had begun to tighten its grip. And somewhere in the city below, a human stood calmly beneath a sign that said he did not belong, already changing everything simply by being there. Lyra Velari did not return to the transit hall the next cycle. She stayed within the upper spire, surrounded by quiet walls and soft lights, but her thoughts were far from calm. Every word Elias had spoken echoed in her mind. Fear used like a tool. The idea disturbed her more than she wanted to admit, because deep down it felt true. From the highest levels of the spire, Lyra could see the whole capital city. Orderly, controlled, perfect. At least that was how it was meant to look. Yet now she noticed small things she had ignored before, patrol routes that avoided certain districts, news feeds that repeated the same phrases, council announcements that spoke of peace while quietly expanding security forces. She had lived her entire life inside this system, trusting it, and now one human had made her question everything. Lyra activated her personal console and opened the restricted archives again. This time she went deeper. She searched for records connected to her own family, House Velari, trade agreements, security contracts, council votes. At first, everything looked clean, too clean. Lyra narrowed her search and included keywords Elias had hinted at. Fear, containment, exceptional threat protocols. Slowly buried beneath layers of authorization, she found fragments, partial files, redacted names, entire decisions approved without recorded debate. House Velari was always present. Her glow dimmed slightly as realization crept in. Her family was not just powerful. They were shaping the rules themselves. A soft chime sounded at her door. Lyra closed the archive instantly, masking her emotions just as she had been taught. "Enter." Her cousin Maylis stepped inside, his posture formal. "You were summoned earlier," he said. "You did not respond." I was resting, Lyra replied smoothly. Melee studied her. His glow shifted faintly, uncertain. You were seen speaking with an off-worlder. Lyra met his gaze. Is curiosity now forbidden? Only when it's inconvenient, Melee said quietly. Be careful, Lyra, our house does not like surprises. After he left, Lyra knew one thing clearly. She was being watched. That night, Lyra made a decision that frightened her more than any threat from her family. She would find Elias again, not openly, not as a noble, as herself. She dressed in simple clothing and adjusted her glow to a neutral tone. Using service corridors known only to residents, she moved through the lower levels of the spire. Her heart raced, not from danger, but from the feeling of stepping outside the life chosen for her. In the lower city, the air was warmer, heavier, the lights dimmer. Here, the Dominion showed its real face. Workers moved quickly. Conversations stopped when patrols passed. Fear lived here quietly. Lyra followed the path she remembered and found Elias near a public data terminal, reviewing trade manifests. He looked up the moment she approached, as if he had expected her. I was hoping you'd come back, he said. You knew I would, Lyra asked. No, Elias replied honestly, but humans prepare for possibilities. They walked together through the crowded district, blending in easily. Lyra realized that Elias adjusted his pace to match hers without thinking. A small thing, but it mattered. I looked into my family, she said at last. Some things don't add up. Elias nodded. They wouldn't. You know more than you've said. Yes. Why not tell me everything? Elias stopped near a quiet overlook above the transit lanes. Because information can be dangerous, and because I needed to know if you were choosing this freely. Lyra's glow flared briefly, then steadied. I am. Elias studied her face carefully, then reached into his pocket and activated a small device. A soft projection appeared between them, data streams, recordings, council votes. Your house, he said, is part of a long-standing network. They control fear of humans to justify power. Every crisis blamed on us strengthens their position. Lyra felt sick, and the Dominion believes it. Because the evidence is managed, Elias said. Truth doesn't disappear, it just gets buried. Lyra clenched her hands. Why are you here? To confirm, Elias replied. And to stop what's coming. Her eyes widened. Coming? Elias shut down the projection. There's a plan, a staged incident, a false attack that will be blamed on humanity. It will unite the Dominion under emergency rule. And my family will lead it, Lyra whispered. Yes. Lyra turned away, struggling to steady herself. Everything she loved, everything she had trusted was built on lies. Leave, she said suddenly. If you stay, they'll destroy you. Elias shook his head. Running won't stop them. It will only prove their stories right. Lyra faced him again. Then what do you want from me? Elias met her gaze. The truth from the inside. Lyra knew what he was asking. Betrayal, exile, loss of everything she had been born into. Yet she also knew she could not pretend anymore. I'll help you, she said. From the shadows above, surveillance drones adjusted their focus. House Velarre watched as Lyra returned to the spire later that cycle. Her parents greeted her warmly, too warmly. Questions were asked gently. Answers were measured carefully. She played her role well. But the house elders were not convinced. In a sealed chamber beneath the spire, holographic maps glowed with red markers, fleet movements, council schedules, media response timelines. The human is still in the city, one elder said. Let him be, another replied. The girl is more valuable. Above them all, Lyra's father spoke calmly. Prepare phase 2. If the human interferes, we accelerate. Elsewhere, Elias sent a quiet signal into deep space. Not a call for help, not a warning, just data. Human ships received it and did not respond. They did not need to. Humans had learned long ago that patience was their greatest weapon. As Lyra lay awake in her chamber, she stared at the ceiling, aware that every step from now on would carry consequences. She thought of Elias standing calmly beneath a sign that said he did not belong, and she realized something terrifying and hopeful at the same time. The Dominion was about to learn what happened when truth finally stepped into the light. And humans were very good at waiting for that moment. Lyra Velarre had learned how to lie long before she learned how to speak freely. It was not taught as a skill, but as a survival habit. In House Velarre, truth was something shaped, trimmed, and released only when useful. Now, as she moved through the bright halls of the spire, Lyra used that training carefully, hiding the storm inside her behind calm steps and measured expressions. The elders were watching her more closely than ever. She could feel it in the pauses of conversation, in the way servants lingered just a little too long, and how security routes subtly changed when she passed. House Velari did not accuse without proof. They observed, they waited, then they acted. Lyra had to move faster than they did. She met Elias in fragments of time, moments stolen between schedules, brief encounters disguised as chance. A quiet corner of a transit station. A maintenance platform overlooking power conduits. Once, only once, in the shadow of an old monument where surveillance systems had blind spots built centuries ago. Each time, the weight between them grew heavier. Elias shared more now, but never carelessly. He showed Lyra pieces of the pattern, letting her connect them herself. Financial flows routed through shell councils. Emergency laws drafted decades before any crisis existed. Fleet mobilization plans designed to look defensive while positioning for control. The conspiracy was vast, and House Velari sat at its heart. They planned to trigger the incident within 2 cycles, Elias said quietly during one meeting. A fabricated human attack on a Dominion relay station. Lyra's glow dimmed. That station supplies half the inner systems. Yes, Elias said. Fear spreads faster when it's justified. Lyra closed her eyes briefly. My family will call for emergency authority. The council will approve it. They always do. And after that, Elias added, humans become the enemy forever. Lyra felt something hard settle inside her. Then we stop it. Elias studied her. Are you ready to lose everything? She opened her eyes and met his gaze. I already have. That same cycle, Lyra was summoned to a private council gathering within the spire. Only immediate family and select elders were present. The chamber was circular, its walls alive with slow-moving light patterns that responded to emotion. Lyra stepped into the center and bowed respectfully. Her father spoke first. You have been distant. I have been thinking, Lyra replied. Thinking can be dangerous, an elder said gently. So can ignorance, Lyra answered before she could stop herself. The light patterns flickered. Her mother watched her carefully. You sound like an off-worlder, Lyra steadied herself. I sound like someone who wants to understand why humans are banned, yet quietly invited when useful. Silence fell. That silence told her everything. Her father's voice hardened. You will cease contact with the human. No, Lyra said. The word echoed louder than she expected. You forget yourself, an elder warned. Lyra straightened. No, I remember who I am, and I will not be part of this lie. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. Accusations, warnings, promises of protection, and threats of exile. Lyra listened, then spoke again calmly. You taught me to protect House Velari, she said, but you never taught me to destroy the galaxy to do it. Her father's glow darkened completely. You will return to your quarters, effective immediately. Lyra bowed once more and left without another word. The decision had been made. House Velari moved that same night. Security was increased across the lower city. Patrols doubled. Communication delays were blamed on system maintenance. The media quietly began discussing human unpredictability again, planting the seeds of fear. Elias felt it immediately. The city's rhythm changed. People walked faster. Workers avoided eye contact. Surveillance drones lingered longer. They're accelerating, he told Lyra during their last meeting before everything changed. Then we have to expose them now, Lyra said. Elias hesitated. Once we do, there's no going back. Lyra placed her hand over his. The contact was brief, steady, human and alien together without fear. I know. They separated soon after, each returning to their role. Lyra accessed the deepest family archives that night. Alarms whispered in the background as she bypassed safeguards meant to stop even her. Files opened that had not been viewed in generations. She found everything. Orders signed by her ancestors. Council votes pre-written before debates occurred. Records of species labeled dangerous and quietly removed from influence. And finally, the plan, a false transmission, a staged explosion at the relay station, visual evidence prepared in advance. Lyra copied it all. As she worked, the door to her chamber opened without warning. Her father stood there, flanked by guards. You have disappointed us, he said. Lyra met his eyes. No, I have disappointed your lies. The guards moved forward. At the same moment, power flickered across the spire. Elias acted. From the lower city, he triggered the data release. Not a single broadcast, but thousands. Civilian networks, neutral trade channels, independent archives. The truth spread faster than it could be stopped. Across the Dominion, screens filled with unfiltered evidence. Confusion followed, then anger. House Veleri tried to shut it down, but it was too late. Lyra was taken into custody, but not harmed, not yet. She was too valuable, too visible. In the council chamber, chaos erupted as members demanded explanations. Allies turned silent. Old favors meant nothing under public scrutiny. And far beyond the Dominion's borders, human ships adjusted their course. Not toward attack, toward visibility. They emerged from hyperspace slowly, openly, transmitting nothing but verified data and navigation codes. No weapons powered, no threats issued, just truth. Elias was detained shortly after, surrounded by security forces who did not know whether to fear him or thank him. He did not resist. As Lyra sat alone in a containment room, stripped of title and comfort, she felt no regret. Fear, yes, uncertainty, yes, but also relief. The lie was broken. House Veleri's conspiracy, built over centuries, was collapsing under the weight of its own deception, and the galaxy was watching. For the first time, humans were not hiding. They were standing in the open, calm and patient, waiting to see who would choose truth over fear. And Lyra Veleri knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, there would be no turning back. The Dominion did not fall into chaos the way House Veleri had expected. There was no sudden war, no panic across every system, no instant call for extermination or retaliation. Instead, something far more dangerous spread: doubt. Across council chambers, trade stations, and private homes, citizens replayed the released data again and again. They compared official statements with archived records. They noticed patterns that had always been there but never questioned. Fear began to lose its grip. Lyra Veleri sat alone in the containment suite, the smooth walls glowing softly around her. The room was not a prison in the traditional sense. It was designed for comfort, meant to convince its occupant that cooperation was the sensible choice. But Lyra knew better. She had been here for one cycle already. Her family had not visited. No accusations, no comfort. Only silence. That silence worried her more than anger ever could. Across the city, Elias Rourke sat in a secure holding area beneath the central security complex. Unlike Lyra's suite, his surroundings were plain and functional. Guards stood nearby, unsure whether to treat him as a criminal or a diplomat. They had received no clear orders. That uncertainty was new. Elias watched the guards quietly, reading the signs of confusion in their posture. None of them were afraid of him. They were afraid of making the wrong choice. That was progress. A senior security officer finally entered, her uniform marked with neutral authority symbols rather than house insignia. "You released restricted data," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. "You exposed members of the ruling houses." "Yes," she hesitated. "You did not falsify anything." "No," she exhaled slowly. "That complicates things." "It was always complicated," Elias said calmly. "You were just protected from seeing it." She studied him for a long moment, then deactivated the recording system. "Human ships have entered observation range." "They were invited," Elias replied. "By whom?" "By truth," Elias said. "It travels faster than fleets." Elsewhere, the council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Representatives shouted, demanded explanations, denied involvement, and accused each other in equal measure. House Veleri's seats remained occupied, but their authority was visibly weakened. Lyra's father stood when addressed, his glow carefully controlled. "These accusations rely on human manipulation," a smaller House representative interrupted. "Then explain the pre-approved emergency decrees dated before the alleged threat." Murmurs spread. Another voice rose. "Explain the hidden fleets." The chamber erupted again. For centuries, the Dominion had believed itself stable because power was predictable. Now that predictability was gone. Outside the chamber, citizens gathered in growing numbers, watching public feeds projected onto massive displays. Workers stood beside nobles, merchants beside engineers, all listening, all questioning. For the first time, the Dominion listened to humans without filters. Human ships remained at a careful distance, arranged in wide arcs around key civilian systems. They did not block trade lanes. They did not issue warnings. They transmitted nothing but open data access and clear navigation signals. The message was simple: we are here. We are not attacking. We are watching with you. That restraint unsettled the old guard more than any show of force. In the containment suite, Lyra received her first visitor. Her mother entered alone, her glow muted and unsteady. She looked older than Lyra remembered. "You should have trusted us," her mother said softly. Lyra met her gaze. I did for most of my life. This was necessary, her mother insisted. The Dominion needs order. It needs honesty, Lyra replied, her mother's glow flickered. You've destroyed everything we built. Lyra shook her head. You built it on fear, that was never strength. For a moment, her mother looked like she might argue. Instead, she turned away. They're calling for your testimony, she said. And the humans, Lyra's heart pounded. Publicly? Yes. That means they've already lost control, Lyra said. Her mother said nothing as she left. The hearing was scheduled quickly before House Velarre could regroup. The chamber was open to public broadcast across the Dominion and beyond. Neutral observers were invited. Trade guilds, independent systems, and even non-aligned species were given access. Elias was escorted into the chamber first. He walked calmly to the center, hands visible, posture relaxed. The sight of a human standing openly in the heart of the Dominion would have been unthinkable just cycles ago. Now it felt inevitable. Lyra followed soon after. Whispers filled the chamber, not of anger but curiosity. The daughter of House Velarre stood beside the human she had chosen to protect. She did not look ashamed. The council leader spoke. You accuse House Velarre and others of orchestrating false threats. Lyra spoke before Elias could. I accuse them of manipulating fear to control the Dominion. On what authority? An elder demanded. On evidence, Elias replied, activating the shared display, and on their own records. The data played again, but this time slowed and explained. Financial trails. Recorded votes, communications chains, patterns made clear. Lyra added context where needed, explaining internal traditions and coded language used by the houses. Each explanation tightened the net. House Velarre tried to object. Their words sounded weak against the clarity of facts. The public watched in silence. When the presentation ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Then a council member asked quietly, if humans are so dangerous, why did they wait centuries to expose this? Elias answered simply, because we hoped you would see it yourselves. That answer spread faster than any argument. Behind the scenes, something else happened. Security forces across the capital began shifting allegiance, not to humans, but to the council as a whole. Orders from House Velarre were delayed, questioned, ignored. Power, once absolute, fractured. Lyra felt it even before the hearing ended. The invisible pressure that had always surrounded her name was gone. She was no longer protected. She was free. House Velarre's private fleets attempted to mobilize, but found their routes blocked, not by human ships, but by neutral trade coalitions refusing passage. We will not fight a lie, they declared. The final blow came quietly. A junior archivist released one last file, proof that the staged relay incident was scheduled within hours. The timing was undeniable. House Velarre's leaders were placed under temporary detainment pending investigation. No force was used. No resistance offered. They had lost the belief of the people. As the hearing concluded, the council leader addressed the galaxy. The ban on humans is suspended pending review. A pause. Effective immediately. The chamber erupted not in anger but in stunned realization. Elias exhaled slowly. Lyra closed her eyes. Outside, the human ships did not move. They waited, not for permission, for acceptance. And across the Dominion, people began to understand something profound. The greatest threat they had ever faced was not humanity. It was the lie that told them to be afraid. And that lie was finally dying. The morning after the hearing felt different across the Dominion. There was no celebration, no riots, no sudden joy or anger. Instead, there was a quiet pause, as if an entire civilization had stopped to take a breath it had been holding for generations. News channels replayed the council decision again and again. The words were simple, but their meaning was enormous. The human ban was suspended. Citizens watched from homes, workstations, transport hubs, and open plazas. Some felt relief. Some felt confusion. Others felt fear slowly loosening its grip. For the first time, the idea of humans was no longer controlled by one voice. Lyra Velarre stood on a balcony overlooking the city she had grown up believing she understood. She was no longer a noble. Her family name still existed, but it no longer protected her. Her access privileges were revoked. Her future was uncertain. And she had never felt more awake. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. Elias stepped onto the balcony, the city lights reflecting faintly in his eyes. He wore the same simple clothing as always, untouched by status or victory. They've confirmed it, he said quietly. House Velarre is officially under investigation. All assets frozen. Council authority redistributed. Lyra nodded. My family built their power carefully. It makes sense that it would fall just as quietly. Elias studied her profile. Are you all right? She considered the question honestly. I lost my home, she said. My title, my certainty. Then she turned to face him. But I gained truth. Elias gave a small, respectful nod. That's a trade humans understand well. Below them, the city continued its rhythm. Ships moved along trade lanes. Workers changed shifts. Life did not stop just because power changed hands. That, Lyra realized, was the most hopeful sign of all. Later that cycle, the council issued a formal request, not a demand, a request. They asked Lyra Velarre and Elias Rourke to remain as advisors during the transition period. Lyra laughed softly when she heard it. They spent centuries ignoring humans. Now they want help. They're learning, Elias replied, slowly. The first human delegation arrived openly 3 cycles later. No warships, no armed escorts, just diplomats, engineers, historians, and mediators. Their ships docked at neutral stations, greeted by mixed crowds, some curious, some cautious, some quietly hopeful. Lyra watched the arrival from the observation platform, standing beside Elias. They look so ordinary, she said. Elias smiled faintly. That surprises people more than anything else. Public forums were opened across the Dominion. Humans spoke about their history, not hiding their mistakes or their conflicts. They explained how fear had once shaped their own governments and how costly it had been to unlearn it. Many listeners were uncomfortable, but they listened. Trade resumed gradually. Joint research projects followed. Old laws were reviewed, rewritten, or erased entirely. The Dominion did not become peaceful overnight, but it became honest. 1 cycle later, Lyra stood before a smaller council chamber, no longer glowing with ceremonial light. The room was simpler now, more functional. She was asked a question she had been preparing for. What will you do next? Lyra did not answer immediately. She thought of her childhood lessons, of walking halls filled with power she had never questioned, of the moment she first noticed a human standing calmly beneath a sign that rejected him. I want to build something new, she said at last. Something that doesn't depend on fear or bloodlines. The council leader nodded. And with whom? Lyra glanced at Elias, who stood quietly at the edge of the room. With those willing to stand in the open, she replied. Elias was offered a formal title that same day. He declined it. I represent humanity best without one, he said simply. Instead, he accepted a role as a bridge, an unofficial presence trusted because it did not seek power. Lyra chose exile voluntarily, not forced. Chosen. She left the Velarre spire for the last time without ceremony, carrying only what she could hold. There were no guards. No crowds, just open space and a waiting ship. As she boarded, she paused and looked back at the city. I don't hate them, she said quietly. Elias stood beside her. You don't have to. The ship lifted smoothly, carrying them away from the place that had defined her life and toward something unknown. Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some systems welcomed humans eagerly. Others kept their distance. A few resisted change entirely. Humans did not push. They waited. Months passed. Then years. The Dominion slowly reshaped itself. Old houses lost influence. New leaders rose, not because of blood, but because of trust. Children grew up learning that humans were not myths or monsters, but people, different, resilient, honest about their flaws. Lyra helped establish open academies where multiple species studied history together. Elias worked quietly in the background, connecting systems that had never spoken directly before. They did not call what they shared love at first. It was built instead, carefully, patiently, honestly. One evening, standing beneath unfamiliar stars, Lyra said something she had never allowed herself to think before. I chose you, she said. Elias looked at her, surprised. I never asked you to. I know, Lyra replied. That's why it matters. Far away, a former House Velarre chamber was being dismantled, its symbols removed. Not destroyed, preserved as a reminder of what fear had built and what courage had undone. The galaxy did not remember this era as a war. It remembered it as the moment when humanity was finally seen, not as conquerors, not as threats, but as mirrors showing others what they could become if they chose truth over comfort. And it remembered Lyra Velarre as the one who looked at a forbidden human and decided that love, honesty, and courage were stronger than any conspiracy ever could be.